Hello, in this video we will understand about the Huntington's disease. So this is a disease due to the genetic transformation and the basal ganglia region of the brain is affected and the involuntary movements in the body which that is motor control will be unable. So the Huntington disease, the basal ganglia, refers to a group of subcortical nuclei responsible primarily for motor control as well as other roles such as motor learning, executive function and behaviors and emotion like the motor learning. So involved these things is the striatum, globus pallidus, internus and externus, subthalamic nucleus, substantia nigra, and the sensory associative cortex, which that we learn how to move and how to smooth move. For example, sit and stand and move our head and arms. So during the exercise. So let's begin to understand. It is a condition that stop parts of the brain working properly over time. So, in this way, the genetic disorder and the neurodegenerative disorder, in this way, the nerves will be damaged completely, which that nerve is the ganglia are present in the brain, so the brain involved. Let's begin to understand our view about the genetic transformation. So, the genetic transformation, the affected father or mother will lead to transfer their gene into their offspring during the gamete formation, when the chromosome will be separate to diploid to form haploid in the form of sperm as well as egg. For example, here is I am taking the father affected. So, the mutated gene on the chromosome 4, so normal gene are present in the female, will lead to gamete formation, and after this gamete formation the fertilization will occur. So in this way the chances is the 50%, the affected child can be 50% and non-affected also 50% because gene contain the chromosome 4. In this manner, remember, this is the promoter will stop or overexpress or like other things. I'm not going to understand the genetics, but just overview. So during the expression of this gene will lead to RNA production. This RNA is the messenger RNA will produce the mute HTT and loss of striatal neuronal function because the dysfunction due to the dysfunctional protein synthesis, not correct protein synthesis, and in this way that is why it is genetic. But let's begin to understand, and we will also understand about the little bit about the treatment and sport in the end of this video. So let's begin to understand the normal and the abnormal brain due to the HD brain. The Huntington disease short is HD. So in this way, the affected is the cortex as well as other thing is the enlargement of frontal horn of the lateral ventricles. So the blue color is showing the ventricle. So in this way, the healthy brain and the HD brain. So the striatum will also affect to swell, and on the other hand, the atrophy of cerebral nerve tissue and basal ganglia. So in this way, here is the atrophy of cerebral nerve. Atrophy means the degeneration and nerve tissue and basal ganglia. The symptoms usually start at 30 to 50 years of age, but can begin much earlier later. Let's begin to understand the normal function for the muscle movement, normal voluntary movement. So how it is possible. So this is the sensory neurons which that will be lead to produce the neurotransmitter, like after go into the interneuron, and this is the interneuron. The neurotransmitter will release in the form of vesicle will be degranulation or the exocytosis of this dopamine and produced normally, as well as the dopamine as well as the glutamate will produce normally. The blue color is the glutamate and the dopamine. the dopamine 2 receptor and the adenosine 2A receptor and the dopamine 1 and A1 receptor will receive in the striatum of the this striatum is the ganglia, and in this way the indirect pathway the GABA and enkephalin and the D2 receptor and A2A receptor involved. In this way it will lead to globus pallidus externus will lead to produce the GABA, and in this way will lead to basically substantia nigra will produce the glutamate normally and will target to the stimulate the globus pallidus internus, and in this way the substantia nigra will basically is the nuclei of the brain, which that will lead to direct pathway the GABA and the NMPP and dynorphin and D1 receptor and A1 receptor will target the thalamus to produce the glutamate, and this glutamate will target to the brain will lead to normal voluntary movement and the smooth movement. While early stage of the dopamine release more in the form of the Huntington disease, and in this way the dopamine will release more in the interneuron, and in this way the more glutamate also release will target to the striatum, because striatum is important for the emotional control as the muscle movement or some other things. So the striatum which that is basically a contain receptor, this is the a neuron the ganglia which that contain D1 receptor and A1 receptor, A2A receptor, the adenosine and the dopamine receptor and the dopamine 2 receptor, which that basically it trigger to release the neurotransmitter will target to the globus pallidus externus and the inhibit via a direct pathway. So first is the indirect pathway will lead to produce GABA and enkephalin through a D2 receptor and A2A receptor, and in this way the globus pallidus externus will produce will lead to GABA will inhibit the substantia nigra through production of GABA, and in this way the glutamate will not produce more and it will not target to the and it decrease of the glutamate, and in this way the globus pallidus internus and the substantia nigra in this way will GABA will produce direct pathway will inhibit, and in this way the no more thalamus stimulation and the glutamate decrease lead to thalamus will not target to the brain, and in this way the hyperkinesis mean the more shivering like muscle movement uncontrollability will be occur, while the early stage will lead to more shivering like and more muscle movement uncontrollably involuntarily, and the late stage is the HD is decreased dopamine release glutamate and GABA hyperactivation, and the same mechanism but the substantia nigra our stimulation decrease in A2A and A1 receptor and D1 and D3 receptor. In this way you can see that when decrease the dopamine and the glutamate will basically our stimulation of the globus pallidus internus and other things and hyperstimulation because the GABA will not inhibit, so that will lead to cause the bradykinesia. The bradykinesia mean the muscle movement will be slow, and in this way you can understand as well the muscle movement when slow, so the movement will be uncontrolled and not our choice but the choice on the basis of the disease. So that is why. So let's begin to understand the treatment and sport. So that was, I hope you make sense about the normal function of the basal ganglia and the early stage and the late stage of HD. So let's begin to understand the treatment and sport. So the no currently cure for HD, and but the medicines for depression, mood swings, and the involuntary movement control can be. The speech and the language therapy for feeding and the communication problems. And physiotherapy to help with movement and the balance. So let's begin to understand the symptoms. So here is the early symptom Huntington's disease. Early symptom is moodiness, fighting, cognitive issue, personality shift, depression, the trouble, focusing, and muscle twitching. This is basically you should need to understand this is the initial, but the symptom and generally the movement disorder. In this the movement will be not, and the cognitive disorder. In this the cognitive problem, and we will learn differently. Psychiatric disorder, and the symptom of juvenile HD is the behaviors changes, physical changes, and the OCD, mania, bipolar disorder also involved. Anyhow, this video was about the Huntington's disease. I hope you make sense about that. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe, like, and share, and give the comment below. Thanks for watching. Bye.